In this very last video of the series, we are going to be talking about specifically a Capture on the Go implementation that depends on the setup that we've made in the other 4 videos. Essentially, we have the workflow configuration, which has all the Capture on the Go plugins, and we're going to use the URL provided by the reverse proxy, which is workflow.example.com, in order to make the forms send and request to the public URL, which of course is going to send to Capture on the Go in the background. In order to show you this, I'm using the incident report demo, which is available on demo.objectiflune.com. So you can download it and actually just download the installer and place it on your computer. And you'll be actually able to follow along if you've been able to do that until now. The incident report Capture on the Go demo is essentially a very simple 3-process workflow. And this is the very basic Capture on the Go demonstration that we have. The first process sends the information to the Capture on the Go server, what is also called the Newbook repository. So if I double click on the output to Capture on the Go, you'll notice that the URL that we're going to use is dependent on a global variable, which is called global.baseURL. This is actually a pretty good practice when you're working with HTML or Capture on the Go documents to use that global variable anywhere that you need to refer to something like a base URL, or in this case, a username and password that you may have to use in multiple plugins. The important one here is the base URL. So if I open global variables and I look at base URL, you'll see that it already says www.example.com. If I change this to workflow.example.com, do not put the last slash at the end if you're using this demo, then that is all I need to do. And if I sent this, then it should be completely functional. What I mean by that is the base URL, when I do the output to Capture on the Go and I send the information, we'll use that base URL. That is the metadata sent to the Capture on the Go application. So the application will be requesting workflow.example.com / what is it? Demo incident report get document and then something. The second process will respond to that. So the demo incident report get document gets called from the public URL workflow.example.com, as I just said. And when it responds, it sends it back to IIS, which is responding with HTML. Now, the create web content, as I mentioned previously, has that base href or the base URL in the code, and that refers to the IP or the address of this machine. That is handled by the outgoing proxy or the outgoing rule that we set also in IIS. I will note, however, that the way that this particular demo is set up, it doesn't actually need the outgoing rule. The reason for this is that the embed all resources option here is checked. And what this does is that it takes all external resources, style sheets, images, JavaScripts, and all of that, and it puts it all in a single HTML document. There's no reference to any external content. And in this case, the outgoing rule is not necessary. It won't cause any issue, but it won't be necessary. Now, the balance between whether or not you want to use embed all resources is that if you use embed resources, all those resources are sent to the client every single time in one shot. Very useful if you're using offline processing, if you're filling documents offline. Otherwise, it's not really necessary. The client, when he opens the document, if embed all resources is not checked, then it will download the resources. And the very last process here is also HTTP server input. So the same rule comes in through IIS, is processed here, and then the response is sent. In this case, the HTTP server input responds with an empty HTML, still goes through IIS and is returned to Capture on the Go, processes, and then sends an email. Now, before I show you the document, I just want to show you one little thing here. Set job info and variables is setting the job info 9 to the base URL, and then it's doing the create web content. And if you have a keen eye, you might have realized that I'm using record ID 0. This is because we don't have any data mapper, we don't have any data for this basic document. So we have the ability to use %9, the job info 9, directly inside of the designer module. Ignore the data model on the right, we're not using it at all. So if I look at the form URL here, and I have, this is basically where the data is sent, you can see that I'm changing the form action to automation.jobinfo9 and then demo incident report process, which means it's using that base URL from the workflow inside of the document. So you change it once and it applies to all your document. Now, one last thing that I kind of forgot, but I'm going to show you now because we do have a bit of time in the video. The base URL that I have, if I open it here, you'll notice that it says http workflow.example.com. If I want this to be secured, all I need to do is to add the S. So what this means, if I do HTTPS and then our base URL, it means that the request of the document from Capture on the Go, so when you click on download document and it triggers that second process that produces it and returns it, that request as well as the response, so the HTML produced by Connect, will all be encrypted using the certificate you provided, which means the communication between workflow and Capture on the Go is secured, even though Capture on the Go here does not have an SSL certificate. The same thing happens when you click on send. So essentially when you submit the data from Capture on the Go, because it uses the same base URL, which is HTTPS, then it will send that data through the encrypted channel, meaning it cannot be intercepted and it cannot be decoded other than maybe by 1,000 computers in 1,000 years. So you can consider that it is safe. So that's it for the global presentation, this mini-series on the IIS, SSL, reverse proxy, as well as Capture on the Go. I hope you learned something new today. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, something you want more precision about, don't hesitate to sound off in the comments below. Thumbs up if you like the video, subscribe if you want to hear about any more in the future. And as always, see you in a few clicks.